Hello everyone and welcome to This Week in Jump. My name is Axel Ablaze and this is episode 2 of a new video series where I am going to be reviewing every series in Weekly Shonen Jump. Each week I'll be going over my top 10 with an honorary lightning round before we get to the top chapter of the week. Now, let me know what your top 3 chapters of the week are down in the comment section, and I will reveal the collective results in next week's episode. But before we begin with this week, I want to go over the results for last week's popularity poll. So taking the top spot for the week was, unsurprisingly, Kagurabachi. Close behind with a tie were Akane-Banashi and Ichi the Witch. Honorable mentions to Shinobi Undercover, Kill Blue, Blue Box, Elusive Samurai, and Ultimate Exorcist Kyoshi for getting multiple votes. Now, getting into this week, we are covering Shonen Jump issue 50 for 2024. Akane-Banashi took the cover and lead color pages, with additional color pages going to Ultimate Exorcist Kyoshi, Super Psychic Policeman Chojo, and Kill Blue. Now, with that being said, let's jump into it. We start the week with our number 10 spot, Nue's Exorcist, with chapter 74, Yamato Rito. So, we start the chapter off with a flashback between Rito and his ex, Mizuki. It's interesting to see that, at least at the beginning with this flashback, he was valuing hard work and efficiency over love at the start, given his family history and his views of exorcists as a whole. Mizuki herself is a part of a branch family for the Fujino family, which is pretty interesting given the current state of things. She's the one that tells him that being part of a branch family doesn't determine your worth. And then at that point, we get to see a one-page montage of everything with their relationship. Now, it does include one little panel where she's actually doubled over from her illness and unfortunately vomiting on the floor. In this chapter as a whole, we get to see Gakuro's growth on full display here, from the combat to the emotional side of things, and it's absolutely fantastic to see. This is what I've been really wanting to see more of. Obviously, we see it a lot with the past fights that he's been in, but it is on full display here, considering if he doesn't succeed, then Fujino is getting taken off, and Fujino herself is getting killed. So great on Gakuro for stepping up here. I also love how we get to see him swimming kind of like a shark through the shadows using Xenodark as Xenodark flies overhead with him. I wish it would have been a lot funnier if Xenodark had been, just vertical, so it actually looked like a shark fin, but I get it. It's still really cool to see. His strategy and battle sense are evolving before our very eyes, as he is using these shadows to his advantage, as he's using Xenodark to provide a distraction as he pops up behind Rito. And I also love that he says, those words would be wasted on the man you are now, when Rito is demanding that Gakuro tells him what Mizuki said to him in the hospital. He's calling him an outsider, he has no right to say anything, yet Rito himself was the one that sent Gakuro to the hospital in the first place. But again, with him saying what he did there, that is the main reason why I put this in the top 10 for this week. And again, just overall, the fact that Gakuro just straight up tells him, no, I'm not telling you like what you want to hear, it goes to show that his emotional growth is getting there. He's getting that backbone. He is becoming that main character that we've been wanting to see this entire time. Mizuki cries in front of Gakuro too when he does talk to her at the hospital, and she never even cried in front of Rito, and this temporarily kind of snaps him out of things as Gakuro is able to get a hit in. And we also get to see that Gakuro continues to learn from Nue as he himself is able to split Xenodark into 2. But unfortunately, we get to see a big blow to Gakuro at the end of the chapter as he is just getting sliced and bloodied. And it's one of several cliffhangers for a lot of chapters that we get to see in this issue of the magazine. So that is a big trend moving forward, especially with my top 10. Now, my big question now is whether Gakuro is going to be able to actually finish this fight on his own, or if he's actually going to need Fujino's help in order to win. I think either way sends a strong message. If it's something where, you know, he's able to stand up and fight for the girl he potentially has feelings for, we still don't know how he feels for all the girls as a whole. Obviously he likes them, there's this, you know, sense of confusion, but it would send one message if he's able to stand up and fight for her by himself. It also sends another strong message though if they fight together, especially because just kind of given what we've seen with Rito and Mizuki, I think that's what she wanted all along, was them to fight together. And if Rito were to see that now, I think that would send a strong message as well. But I think either way works. I'm excited to see what we get moving forward. But overall, really great, strong effort from New Way, and that's why it made it into the 10th spot for this week. At number 9, we have Blue Box, number 172, What's in Front of You Right Now? So the chapter opens up with the first round of the qualifiers for the Winter Cup, and Chinatsu scores the last basket of her respective game. Now, whether or not that's actually, you know, what won the game, don't really know, but it's a big first win for her, since this is her last tournament. She gives a pep talk to one of her teammates who's feeling down for messing up midway, but there's no need to be down right now. You pick yourself up, you get back up, you rise to the challenge. Like, there's still several games that they have to play, and there's no time to keep yourself wrapped up in these bad moments in the present. Meanwhile, Yumeka and Saisho are playing in their first game as well, and Chinatsu notices that she's in peak form. She overhears that she's been practicing with like college players and whatnot. And obviously this is a big step up for her, given, you know, there wasn't a whole lot of lead up for her in the previous tournament where she lost against Yumeka and Saisho as a team. The panel showing the distance between the two, where it's a white panel and it's just them, it's really striking. I love that panel, and I can only imagine the mix of emotions that she's feeling there. Because again, Yumeka was her friend. She wanted Yumeka to play basketball again, but at the same time, because Yumeka is playing basketball again, it is standing in direct opposition to her goal of winning the tournament. And we saw that with the previous tournament where she lost. So can only imagine what's all going through her head there. After that, we get a couple pages where they go practice and whatnot, and then she looks entirely surprised when she sees that Taiki was waiting for her after practice. And I mean, all of us as the readers are like, no, we expected him to be there, but it's cute seeing the surprise on her face. Nishida, we learned that Taiki didn't get to congratulate her right away because Nishida senpai came in to practice. He's been so burnt out by studying and he just wants to play some badminton. After that, Chinatsu pulls Taiki into a little alley and goes in for a big hug, and just has this moment of vulnerability with him. And I think that's really big for her character, that she has that moment. Because Taiki is there, she can be vulnerable with him, and she's able to let out these feelings that she didn't necessarily get to do before. So that's really big. The I love yous that they say to each other, it's really cute. And she tries to go in for the kiss, but she can't do it yet. Like, she's just like, like, if I do that, I'm gonna focus on that and I can't focus on everything else. So I applaud her for having that kind of restraint, as cute as it would have been to see them kiss, but now is not the time, I guess. Overall, I'm still very happy with the progress of their relationship, especially since we don't get to see that a lot in other shonen series, so this has been a plus. After that, we get a quick Haru mention where she says that Karen hasn't seen him for a while, and Taiki thinks that he's just studying. I'm hoping I'm not reading into that and that there's more going on and it's literally him just laser focused on studying. Fingers crossed. We know how this author loves to throw wrenches in some of our other ships going on, so We'll see. And at the end of the chapter, we see that Chinatsu's dad has come to visit. And so again, yet another cliffhanger. It throws a damper on things with what's been going on with this chapter, what's going to happen next. I'm very curious to see what happens, especially if he's able to infer anything about their relationship, since they haven't been open about that yet, but we will see. Moving on, we have number 8, Sakamoto Days, Days 189, Great Misfortune. So, Shin tries to kill Tenkyu, but Heisuke steps in to stop him, and he doesn't want to kill a guy he hasn't even fully talked to yet. He also realizes that killing even one guy could set their progress back a lot since joining Sakamoto. Like, what is the point of everything that they've done up to now if they just kill a guy that they could potentially work with? But Shin, because he has the mind reading ability that he has, he's able to see that if Tenkyu is given the opportunity, he would kill Aoi and Hana with no hesitation. This is a man that is dangerous. He is more dangerous than a lot of the people that they have dealt with up to this point, because he is a very to the point character. That is who he is. There's not a lot of nuance. It's very laser focused. But at that moment, Atari and the two guards that were guarding her come crashing through a wall right in front of Tenkyu. Of course they do. And Atari says that they have stumbled into the Great Misfortune, the title of this week's chapter. The male guard is on the attack, but Tenkyu doesn't fight back at all. When Shin and Heisuke arrive on the scene, he reveals that he was keeping to Shin's instructions of not killing anyone. He was still believing that Shin is the one that is the one making all these predictions. That being said, Miss Hoshi is the epitome of naivety, as she immediately refutes Shin being the fortune teller. After that, Mr. Daikyo immediately gets obliterated. This man explodes as that arrow comes just shooting through his chest and just, again, destroying this man. Everybody is just standing there, like, mouths agape, and just like, oh, what just happened? And at this point, I'm fully convinced that Miss Hoshi is going to die. The female guard is going to die. There is no way she doesn't at this point after what happened. And considering Atari apologized to both of her guards when they saw Tenkyu, like, I can't help but think that she is going to die here, especially since there was the prediction previously that 2 people were going to die. I mean, that being said, though, this arc can't end yet because I haven't seen a part yet. I need him to come back into the story. They're in a prison with all these people. I need to see a part again. We can't end it before then. But, yeah, this is very dangerous. I'm curious to see what happens to Tenkyu and Atari after this, because I'm sure he's going to be grabbing her or something. If she dies, I'm going to be sad, but, you know, we'll see what happens. Otherwise, another great episode of Sakamoto Days, another big cliffhanger going into the next week. We'll see what happens, but danger, Will Robinson. Danger, danger. Past that, we go to number 7, Witch Watch, chapter 178, The Troubles Kuan Shiranui Only Knows. So Witch Watch is back after a break last week, and the chapter opens up with Morihito looking at an old photograph from approximately 20 years ago. And it's in that moment that he recognizes his new teacher, and he tries to confront him when he goes to school. He also sees his dad, he sees Kanshi's dad, he sees Nico's mom, and he sees another character. Curious to know who that other guy is, but I digress. So, when he does confront Mr. Shiranui at school, he says that he also recognizes him from his mother's funeral. Now, Mr. Shiranui doesn't want to reveal anything, though, and he tells Morihito that he should leave things to the adults. But considering everything that has happened in this manga leading up to that point, we all know that that wouldn't happen. Morihito himself says that he wants to use his strength he was born with to protect those closest to him, especially after what happened with his mother's death. Meanwhile, Urishino tells Miss Makia that she wants to go straight into creating manga after high school and not go to college. So there is a little bit of a Uran Mirage focus in this chapter because we have our manga duo. Now, Urishino is clearly determined, but Miss Makia has second thoughts, especially because she has responsibility for giving her this drive towards manga. Now, she then goes to talk to Mr. Shiranui about this, and like any Miss Makia chapter, we get Hunter x Hunter levels of text in one page. Like, my god. And if you actually go through and read everything in the bottom panel, it is an incredibly meta commentary about the manga and anime industry as a whole, and it's extra ironic too, considering that Witch Watch was on break last week. So if you skim through it, I definitely recommend actually going back and reading it, because it's pretty funny. So Mr. Shiranui, he reveals then to Miss Makia that he knows someone from his college days that creates manga, but he can't really remember her manga name, and he can't remember her pen name. And it's hilariously ironic that the one that he's talking about is the creator of Uran Mirage that Miss Makia is absolutely obsessed with. And it turns out that while he was in college, he was drunkenly rambling on about his stories from 20 years ago, and that's what she used as story content for Uran Mirage. And she then specifically tells him to read this week's chapter in Weekly Jaguar, and because he is literally reading the manga version of him, he realizes in that moment that he needs to trust the kids a little bit more. And it's at that moment that Nico's mom sends him a new prophecy. So he then brings the boys back to school so that he can talk to them, and at this point in time, he is finally going to reveal more history about what happened 20 years ago when he was the supposed keystone for a mission with their parents and whatnot. So because of everything that was revealed, with how they were the inspiration for Uran Mirage, I went back and I reread chapter 100, which was the chapter where it was Uran Mirage for the entire chapter, and it gives it entirely new meaning with all these details that we have. Like, I highly recommend going back and reading chapter 100 for yourself and kind of just picking things up, like, oh wow, like this references things really well. It's also interesting that, like, because of everything that was talked about, Morihito's dad and Kanji's dad were kind of paired in this boy love pairing that we've been seeing for this entire manga so far, so that's a pretty funny detail as well. But I'm very excited to get into the backstory of things, because there's a lot that we need to learn from 20 years ago, and I'm excited that we finally get to see it. Moving along, we have number 6 for this week, Hunter x Hunter again, number 406, Regalia. So poor Nobunaga, he gets singled out right at the beginning of the chapter for being the only troop member with an obvious exposed weapon, and he's going to have it confiscated, so he's not too happy about that. We also get to see them traveling up the stairs to the top, or to the top of tier 2, next to the hull of the Black Whale. And this is the first instance in this chapter getting to see Tagashi's pen still at work, and I love the details of the in-between of the ship that they're in. It's really cool. I love that we're getting to see Takashi art again. Not just, like, he's great with writing. He really is. But, like, getting to actually see his art is always a treat, and this was at least that first look into it. So while they're going up the stairs, the troop trio is once again able to deduce the scheming of Hai Li and what they've been doing, how they've been able to get away with certain things with subcontractors and whatnot. And the mafia guy that's with them is just like, I feel like an upstanding citizen when I'm talking to you guys, because what the hell is going through your heads that you're able to do all of this? So Nobunaga, he decides then he's going to go back downstairs, but he does warn his other troop members about the highly lawyer guy that has the counter type Nen ability with the soldiers. And they're like, you should have warned us about that in the first place, but I digress. Meanwhile, we go back to Heinrich from Jiu, who has now reunited with Zakuro. He was the guy with the IV, and they're roaming around when another Jiu member comes up to show them that Lynch is dead. She was the one that punched Banolinov and was able to get his inner voice to come out before he killed her. So as the two of them are going and they're walking through, they're carrying the body of Lynch, they're able to discuss everything and deduce that the Hisoka that they had come across was a fake, and whoever was the fake had then pretended to be Lynch and killed Lynch as well. So there's a whole lot of deductions going around, a lot of very smart people, which I would hope so if you're that high up in the mafia and whatnot. And they say that they are willing to go to war with the Char if the troop is involved, and they will avenge Lynch's death. Probably not, given that they're going up against the troop, but good luck, boys. You're definitely going to need it. Meanwhile, Krollo is attending the funeral procession for Prince Hulkenberg, or what we assume to be Prince Hulkenberg at this point in time. From his book, he is using the ability Love Dial 6700, stolen from Megate Nairumi. By using a conjured cell phone, you can search for your ideal partner. By inputting the criteria, a 6 to 20 digit number will be displayed, and when dialed, guidance will be provided. So who exactly is Krollo searching for? He used it in Heaven's Arena as well, and so far he's having no luck finding whoever it is he's trying to use that ability with. And we never actually get the detail of how many more times he's able to use it. There's always some kind of cutoff, so how many more times can he actually use this Nen ability? We also finally get a look at the royal family's 3 sacred treasures all together. So we're all familiar with the pot that you stick your hand in and you get the Nen ability if you're one of the princes. There was also a mummy, there was also the sword. And these are the items that he specifically is going after. And the look that Togashi gives Krollo when he says that the spiders will go on even if he dies is haunting. It's haunting in the best way possible. I love this look that he puts on his face with all the lines and whatnot. It looks super creepy. He also says that his design of the spiders is worthy of awe. What exactly does this mean? What is his vision of the spiders? What does he want people to see, think of them? I'm very curious. But I love that page as a whole. And then with one final call, he's able to determine that the person that he's looking for is on the ship, but that person is out of range currently. As Prince Hulkenberg's casket, or again, the casket for whoever they have inside, is getting paraded through. It's another dense chapter. There's a lot going on as per usual, but you have to love all the lore and everything that's going on. Again, I just continue to be excited. I'm glad that we continue to have this stretch of chapters, and I'm excited to see what Togashi still has in store. For number 5, we have Akane-Banashi, story 134, There Is Everything. So first off, I love the style of the opening color pages and the in black and white Shueisha manga at the bottom. It's very retro. I love it. I love the colors. I love everything that we have about it. Isho is huffing and puffing as he gets to his seat at the show. He is still badly hurt, bleeding, bruised, and he is just angry. He hates that Master Kuroku stopped the fight, and he scoffs at him thinking that he's a hero for doing this. Like, he's just a bum. He's a guy that has a silvery tongue. Like, what worth does he actually have? But the blank spread with Master Kuroku and that smile on his face is so clean. I love it. It's great. So good. And it kind of, in a way, it previews what we're about to see, or not see, honestly. So, in the beginning, Isho is hallucinating a bit as he stews in his scorn for this guy, but he snaps out of it as he sees Master Kuroku make udon eating motions using his hands and his fan. The entire theater erupts in applause at this man as Isho is just in awe of him. And I love this next part. There's nothing here, and yet there is everything. And this to me is the very essence of Rakugo, where you are a lone performer on a stage. You are on an empty stage, just sitting there in front of an audience, and yet because of your words, you are creating this world and this story for people to engage in. And the better you are at your craft, the better you are at making people visualize and like be part of this world. It's fantastic. I love that we get these words to explain it in this chapter. It's great. And it's at this moment that he decides that he wants to follow Master Kuroku. Now, the Rakugo performance itself is very simple and subdued. It doesn't have that same punch and grandeur of a lot of the stories that we've been seeing in the present day. Even with Master Shigemo's story that he had, like, there was a lot going on. But when you think back to it at the same time, his art was very simple. There was so much that you gleaned from his performance, despite the fact that, like, it was as simple as it was. But it's that simpleness itself that really shows his craft. And honestly, in this moment, we are seeing Isho's ideal for Rakugo forming before his very eyes. But it's going to be very interesting to see how Shigema becomes the one that gets honestly closer to Master Kuroku, knowing what we do in the present. What is going to be the story of these two as they learn from their master, they learn from his craft? Like, where does that divide become? And why isn't it that Master Kuroku doesn't give Isho the same, learning that Shigema gets? I'm very curious to see what happens. This backstory continues to be great. Overall, really fantastic. Just once again going to show how amazing Akane-Banashi is week to week. From there, we go to number 4, One Piece, chapter 1131, Loki in the Underworld. Just like Witch Watch, One Piece is back after a break, and Luffy is super excited to be in Elbaf, to the point that he just keeps talking over Loki. He just keeps talking and talking and talking until Loki himself is just like, shut up! And he explains that he is the sun god, or the self-proclaimed sun god, not knowing that obviously he's talking to Luffy, who is seemingly the current vessel of Mika. He's supposedly been chained here for 6 years. I'm very curious to know how that fits into the timeline, with him having a thing for Lola before the engagement was broken off, and everything with Big Mom and whatnot. From there, Loki offers to destroy an entire pirate crew of Luffy's choosing if he frees him from the sea prism stone constraints that he's currently tied up into this giant tree. And at that point, too, Loki starts to threaten him with the giant beasts that he's befriended, as well as mentioning the humans dressed in dirty robes. They mentioned that they were knocked unconscious, too, previously by Shanks' Conqueror's Hockey. And at this point, Luffy is just like, what? You guys mentioned Shanks? As he has already befriended all of the giant beasts, because of course he has. That's just how Luffy is. Right before Loki calls Shanks a coward, which then results in Luffy going into Gear 4, launching off a Kong gun, and Loki is just like, well, I didn't mean it. I was lying. It was, I was kidding. I wasn't doing anything. So from that point, he's just like, Jesus Christ, I'm gonna kill this guy as soon as I get out of these constraints. But Luffy wants to know more of why Shanks was there. But Loki's like, you're not getting that information unless I get something that I want. Like, being very transactional. From there, we flip to our OG Straw Hats, as they are currently still on the run on the bridge, as they are being followed by Rodo, who is still smoldering from getting hit by lightning, and he himself is being followed by Gerd and Goldberg, who are seemingly running after him while carrying the Sunny. And I still think it's funny that the doctor's name is Gerd. I get that it's a Norse name, but it's also a GI-related medical condition, and every time I see that name, I admittedly think of that rather than the Norse name. Meanwhile, because there's a lot of meanwhiles in this chapter as we are bouncing from place to place to place, Hyrudine and his other crew member, Stanson, are hunting down a giant moose to welcome the Straw Hats with. We also get some reminder text at the bottom, since we haven't seen him in a hot minute, at least story-wise anyway, because the last time that we saw him or anything related to him was back in Dressrosa. Meanwhile, there's actually a chart with his crew at the end of that double page spread of panels that shows the organizational chart of the new giant pirates. But this isn't the first time that we've seen any of them, because we did see them in the cover stories from chapter 895 to 901. They used to work for Buggy's delivery service before deserting in favor of the Straw Hat Grand Fleet. So I'm curious to see if we get any more story involving that and them deserting. So that'd be really cool to see. Back on Dorian Broggy's ship, Brooke, who apparently is a hairdresser on the side, has given Robin a haircut so that she can look like she did at the beginning of the manga with the bangs. She does it so Saul can, more easily recognize her. Frankie cries. I wanted to cry a little bit in that moment too, but the chapter ends with Saul's life alert going off. He has fallen and he can't get up. Per usual, at the start of any new One Piece arc, the crew is everywhere doing everything. Loki's gonna get freed eventually, obviously. There's no way that this man doesn't get freed in some way, but I'm very curious to see what his devil fruit does, considering that he killed in order to get this specific devil fruit ability. I also want to know more about his relationship to Lola. Will we maybe see her and her crew return in this arc? Remains to be seen. There's a lot still going on, not to mention how would they have even gotten to the New World in the first place, let alone that far into it. Who knows? But overall, Elbaf continues to be really fun from the get-go, and I'm excited to see where things go from here. Past that, we get to number 3, our bronze on the list for this week, Ichi the Witch, 10th Hut, the Hisami Magic, Part 4. We start out the chapter with a giant man emerging from a hung fish, and that man became Ichi's mentor. And we say giant, but relatively speaking. Minakata is his name, and he's a traveling fisher from the east that never reveals his face from behind the deer-like skull that he's got on his head. Like what Ichi did with the Hisami magic, Minakata wanted to cut a fish open from the inside, but he was too embarrassed to do it in front of other people, so he had been practicing it on the mountainside. Ichi himself learned a lot from Minakata, including how to identify a fish, doing ritual dancing. But the biggest thing that he learned from him, the biggest thing that at least stuck with him, was the style of cooking that he learned from Minakata, the cooking that he had learned from back in the East. And that is what he is using in this moment to slice up the Hisame magic. So, Descaris uses the spell Barak to turn the ice around them into a sushi boat as Ichi starts filleting the Hisame magic. And it is a bloodbath as poor Descaris and Mugi are just getting drenched in blood and guts. Anytime I see Mugi just reacting in any way is hilarious. And she is trembling as she puts like the single flower down for decoration. The poor girl is scarred. But I really can't help but laugh at the final just messy, bloody presentation. He's just like, behold, you have been decorated and you are now sashimi, and like you just see blood like just dripping over the edge of the boat. It's hilarious. And he's just like, you guys should dig in, like you should use the sauce to eat. And he's really saying, hey, let's eat the Hisame magic. And sure enough, she is pleased. The Hisame magic is pleased by what's been done. She is fashionably grotesque, and declares that Ichi is the winner of her challenge, turning into a magic stone between Ichi's chopsticks. Not before saying, hey, we should go on like a date sometime or whatnot. And he is hilariously disappointed when she turns into the magic stone, because he's like, I can't eat this. Like all of her fish meat just disappears as she turns into the magic stone. So all that hard work is just gone and he can't eat. He's more frustrated that he can't eat than the fact that like he just defeated the magic before him. It's at this point that Mugi asks if all of their missions are going to be like that, to which we get a strong, oh hell nah, from Descaris. She's just like, no, we are not doing this. This is not going to be the norm. And despite that, there is a brief moment of admiration from Descaris, where she recognizes that because of his background and whatnot, there are things that only he can do, before she's saying it's probably just going to keep being stupid things, which is funny. The little girl Chrissy gets reunited with her family because Descaris was working on defrosting and healing the villagers behind the scenes, while Ichi was working on the fish dressing. And we get a funny little moment with Ororo too, where Ichi starts just stretching his face. Chrissy thanks Ichi. It's super cute, and it's funny to see it's funny to see that he wants to celebrate with a sashimi boat at the end, since he couldn't eat the Hisame magic. And at this point, our boy now has both lightning magic and ice magic, and obviously he still has Ororo too, with his once per 3-day super spell if he wants to do that. It's been a really fun ride. It's been a fun short 4 chapters for this little arc. I'm curious to see how much we see after the fact, if we get a Hisame magic part 5 where he's using the magic and testing it out or whatnot. I'm also curious to see, just because this is the second magic that he's gotten that has had as strong of a personality. I'm curious to see if we get to see more of the Hisame magic in some kind of presence. We didn't get as much with Inari, just because that was a one and done kind of thing, but I'm curious to see if we get anything more with the Hisame. But it's been really great overall. I'm excited to see what their next mission is from here, but I really want to see them interact with other witches, just because I think by getting to see how other witches do things, we'll get to see more of a disconnect from what Ichi does in comparison. Only time will tell, but I absolutely love this chapter. And this was toward the top of the TOC this week, which is fantastic, and it's getting another color page for next week, so let's freaking go. After the bronze, we get the silver. And taking silver this week is Undead Unluck at my number 2 spot. We've got number 230, Undead Unjustice. So Julia finds herself in Victor's soul as we see fragments of his memories throughout all of the loops. At the very surface level of things are the fun moments that he shared between himself and Juiz, but despite all of that, as Julia is looking on and seeing all of these fun memories, she can't help but think to herself, you know, despite all this, he wanted to kill her. Why? So after that, we see a memory with Luna talking to young Victor and Juiz. This is their very first meeting, and Luna says that glitches have formed in their world, and Luna wants to have people become vessels for them. The 5th rule in particular, so this is justice, will later become a master rule and has taken a liking to Juiz. But then we get bombarded with the news that a new loop is about to start. The second game. So this is the very start of everything, with the first loop going immediately into the second loop, as they have seemingly just found the round table. We don't get to actually see them coming across the round table. We get alluded to that they knew about certain things that were going on, but I'm still very curious to know how they came across the round table in the first place, how it was specifically those two. I'm sure we'll still see it, but I can't help but be curious. So Luna then says that only one person can sit in the round table seat and the other person will die. Victor volunteers to be the one that dies and will come pick up Juiz after the loop restarts. He'll become undead, but his mouth moved on his own as he said that. Luna says that their negator abilities have manifested, so Juiz must have unknowingly used injustice on Victor himself for him to say that. The manipulation here at the beginning is very strong. So the next grouping of memories after that is the various memories of forming the Union and finding members to join them in their quest to end the game once and for all. It's also funny to me that they called it the Union because it has "un" in its name. Fantastic, funny, no criticisms there. They then mention that one fought for his sake and the other fought for her sake. So both of them had been fighting for the sake of the other this entire time, despite all the frustrations, despite Victor saying that he wanted to kill Juiz. Julia makes it to the end, and she finds Victor. She finds his younger version of him, and he tells her to hurry and take his hand, since Death's ability is starting to make him disappear. Injustice hasn't manifested yet, though, but as Victor emerges from Andy's husk back in the real world, he says that it's a tragedy that he couldn't die. Tragedies are all about perspective, and it's in this moment that injustice seems to activate. And Victor thanks Soul for being the first rule. It's because of Soul himself that he and Julia/Juiz were connected this entire time. Fun little detail too that I noticed, as he is materializing more, he's already wearing a Union uniform that has the insignia on the collar and whatnot, so that is great. And just given the history that these two have, it makes for a very powerful chapter. Getting to see these two reunited has been such a blessing. I hope that they actually get to maintain this relationship, that Victor gets to stick around. I have every finger crossed that we get to see this, but it's been super exciting. Injustice is back on the table. Undead number 2 is back on the table. We've got Undead Unluck. We've got Undead Unjustice. We've got 2 amazing pairs. I'm excited to see where things go from here. But absolutely fantastic. No notes. Super exciting. Before we get into our number 1, though, we begin our lightning round with every other series from the magazine that didn't quite make it into the top 10. We start with Yokai Buster Murakami with its final chapter, Mistaken Humanity. So, Kuin, for whatever reason, merges with Sanmoto Gorozaimon to be sacrificed so that Murakami can slash him with the sword, and it being like Kuin's like final sacrifice. And it's really funny seeing the two of them merge with like Kuin's like just like open mouth screaming face in Sanmoto's chest, because Murakami then takes them to go hang out, like just like a day date where they're going to the movies and going to the arcade and going to all these other places. My favorite moment of all of them was karaoke, where Sanmoto has one microphone up to his mouth and he has another microphone up to Kuin's mouth in his chest. And we end the series with Murakami explaining who he is, and it's just as confusing with his friends, more so than what we had before. It was a fun little ride overall, and I wish Daiki Ihara good luck with his next series. From there we have Hakutaku Chapter 8, Happy, with a question mark. We open with Zenji reminiscing about his brother before his death. Poor guy didn't get isekai'd though, because he was hit by a car and not a truck. His little sister immediately vibes with our female lead, and they form a plan to make Zenji come join their team, as Hikama makes a plan for the park game. Raika once again corners Zenji at school as she uploads his old game online for a popular streamer to play. Curious to see if augmented reality is used and to strike a chord with Zenji in the next chapter though, since that is what we alluded to at the very beginning. I'm curious to see what Hikama wants to do, but it's probably AR. It's probably AR. That's what my guess would be. From there, Ultimate Exorcist Kiyoshi Chapter 20, The Great Demon Lord's Descent. Neat little color page to start showing off character color schemes, but nothing crazy. It is better than Shinobi Undercover's color page from last week, since this one has Jack Joe in it. Always great to see Jack Joe. So because of Kiyoshi's quick thinking, he was able to save the 3 schoolmates on top of the school from getting their souls absorbed, whatever, that all of these other people around town have just suffered from. The Great Demon Lord Astaroth has arrived. He's got a pretty neat design too, and he kind of mumbles to himself that he's only got 3 minutes, and I'm assuming that means he's got 3 minutes on this plane, probably because of how strong he was and the summoning that was involved in getting him there. From there, Kiyoshi is just launching attack after attack after attack after attack, and I was impressed by the art with this, with all the fighting going on, but I will admit that it did lack a little bit of impact for me, just because, again, it was just kind of one after the other, and every single one of them, at least so far, like, it feels like a name and an ability kind of thrown together with it. It doesn't have that same impact for me, especially seeing them one after the other. Still really fun though, and I'm curious to see how the Great Demon Lord fights back, because he does have blood dripping from his mouth. He's smiling, he's just like, oh man, this is what I've been waiting for. But we'll see what happens next chapter. Me and Roboco, Chapter 209, Praise and Bondo. So we finally learn why Matsuo and Gorilla talk to Bondo the way that they do, where they have like the compliments, but it looks like they're bullying him. So the reason is, if they praise him too much, it all goes to his head, and he gets full of himself. Shenanigans ensue, and the boys try to reward him in subtle ways for the good deeds that he does throughout the chapter, until he eventually reaches an ascended state. But apparently his fly was down the entire time, and so he comes back out of it. It's a fun little chapter overall, kind of weird with the fly down at the end to end it, but still good. Shinobi Undercover Chapter 9, Umineko's Shopping. Now that our female ninja has had a few chapters to show off, it's time for our other boy ninja, Umineko, to show off just in time for the sports festival. Despite being stoic on the outside, he's apparently a super big Yodaka fanboy on the inside. Even has a Brazilian dance moment that he compares to things going on. We see him showing off to Yodaka as the kids go to the mall, but they run into the honey-crested buzzard from the last chapter, and the dude just obliterates the sports shop with one swipe of his hand as Aoi approaches Yodaka, since she could tell he was there the entire time. She literally has just Yodaka radar. How will they work this out? I'm curious to see. I want to see more of Umineko in action, potentially teaming up with Yodaka to make things happen. We'll See, I'm assuming that he's going to get bodied by the buzzard, but only time will tell. Elusive Samurai, Chapter 180, Siege 1340. 1340. Sadamune's forces attack Tokiyuki's fortress. Tokiyuki's numbers are much smaller, but they're using their defenses to their advantage. Sadamune makes a comment about how the enemy can't win while only defending, just as Tokiyuki comes striding in on horseback and trying to shoot him with an arrow. Of course, he misses. Just then, reinforcements arrive for both sides, with Tokiyuki reuniting with Hoshina and Shinomiya's forces from the very beginning of the manga. Myojin was able to circumvent his pact with Sadamune to give Tokiyuki the help that he needed. And overall, it's a great chapter. It's great to see these guys again. It's been a long time since they've been able to fight. It's still disappointing that we don't get to see the 3 great generals in action, but I'll take what we can get. Astro Royale, Chapter 29, I'll Leave It to You. So, turns out that the Astro Drug was originally meant for real asteroids in the first place, as Himuro's Astro turns into a coiling cannon arm. And as he's explaining his position, he continues to show that, yes, he really is a just true scumbag. There is nothing so far that he has revealed that is in any way redeeming. It's also interesting to note that he mentioned that Hibaru has the same hypocritical eyes as Hibaru's father. Very curious to know what that means and what kind of connection that he has to him. Whatever that means though, Himuro then runs off to go and finish Rari before she can fully disfrost from the ice that he encapsulated her with. But just as he's about to shoot his cannon one more time, Hibaru jumps in the way to protect Rari as well as Kinpa. And he leaves the fight in her hands as he kind of gives her a little slap on the hands for the baton to be passed off. I'm very curious to see how she fights. We'll have to see how she does, how she uses her invisibility to do anything with this. It's time for Kinpa to step up and give us that girl boss moment that we've been waiting for. From there, Super Psychic Policeman Chojo, number 38. Thank you for being born, Senior Police Officer. Better color page here than Murakami to start. Chojo is getting a commendation for stopping Inukai Omega last chapter, and his friends at the office decide that they want to throw a party for him. We then proceed to see the gang going around town to find out more about Chojo, and they get bits and pieces of his past. It's funny to see younger Chojo and the different phases of his life he went through leading up to a very weird but sincere party thrown for him. He can't get mad though because he's just like, wow, they put in effort, I guess. I can't be mad at that. It's wholesome and funny overall. Kill Blue, page 77, make me a themed cafe, maggots. So the last of the 3 color pages here, and it gets a slight edge over Chojo's in my opinion. The school's culture festival is set to begin, and this means war. The Home Ec Club is nothing but serious about this since they have a rivalry with the Maid and Butler Society Club. The enemy has a trio of unicorn idol triplets, because of course they do, at their disposal, while the Home Ec Club is doing a Fuwa-Cure themed cafe. So I'm glad that we are immediately still carrying that over from the previous chapter. It's funny to note to me that the bad guys seemingly have no intention of interfering because they themselves want to enjoy the festival. So I'm excited to see where things go from there. hima-ten, number 18, prepping for the school camping trip. So Kana is upset that she can't go on the school camping trip with Iemori and Yoshino because it's a second year only thing. But she is excited to go shopping with Yoshino for clothes. Of course, who do they run into? It's Iemori. Of course it's Iemori. Why wouldn't it be him? So they run into him and they take the opportunity to go dress him up and shop for clothes. Since he himself is out to buy new clothes, since he's been very frugal, he's only been wearing stuff that he's had since middle school because he's been saving up the money that he's had. So of course Kana dresses him up like a butler because that is her manga fetish, but Yoshino sets him up with a few different fashionable outfits as well, but he declines all of them. It doesn't feel like him. he does end up settling for a knitted vest look and a long sleeve shirt, and we get a cute little fashion show of sorts at the end with the different characters. It was very cute overall, really great, made it very close to my top 10 for this week. And then rounding things out is Mission Yozakura Family Mission 250 Division. So because the mission was going so well up to this point, we find out that Asa was in on it all along. He knew what was going on with Momo. He didn't want to relinquish Momo's dream powers to anybody, and so we reveal that he used the ability Division to take over Momo's mind, and because he did that, he quote-unquote fully possessed Tayo, as his hair just goes fully white. We see a glimpse of Kyoichiro's true spring blooming as well, which is apparently super dangerous. Momo warns him that he can only use it once. It's interesting to note that his entire body turns black, because, I mean, that's what Void has been about this entire time. The chapter, though, ends with the twins face-to-face with Tsubomi Yozakura. What will she say to help the twins? And where will Asa go from here? Banger chapter all around, and just outside of the top 10 for this week, which leads us to number 1 for the second week in a row. We have Kagurabachi chapter 57, Collapse. And I'm going to admit right now, this was not going to be number 1 to me until the end of the chapter, because holy crap, was it good. So, we start things off with paper butterflies carrying a sword through the air in the scene of Chihiro and Hirohiko in the theater. The temple is also pretty destroyed after Mr. Himura's attack with Tobimune. The tree magic Hishaku guy, he decides that he's just going to disappear. He disappears in a wisp of fire. And Hakuri is still coughing up blood, despite the fact that he wants to summon Kumayuri, to which everyone else is like, no. You are running on adrenaline. You are going to die if you literally move or do anything. We see the dead body of one of the temple guards as well, and they talk about his 14-year-old sister, now without a brother, and we see this conflict and whatnot in Mr. Himura and his actions from there. Back at the theater, though, Hirohiko says that the Hishaku failed since Tobimune was recaptured. Despite this, they fully intend on still killing the Swordmaster so that Yura can wield the Shinuchi. Hirohiko then goes into a history lesson about the Swordbearers and Swordmaster being heroes, or at least that's what they're taught in school. But are they really heroes with what the Shinuchi alone can do? I mean, it literally summons murder plants. According to Hirohiko, at that moment, he then says that Mr. Samura thinks that the Swordmaster should die, and that he made a pact with Yura 3 years ago. Mr. Samura also said that all the Swordbearers should die. All of them. Just then, the sword that was carried by the paper butterflies from the beginning of the chapter falls to the stage. Hirohiko, being the madman that he is, takes one of his severed arms, bites it, and throws it at Chihiro, just using his teeth, and he makes his way toward the stage. He then grips the sword in his teeth and calls out its name, Himeyuri. And as he calls its name, his paper sorcery ceases to be, and the butterfly is turned to the crumpled paper, signifying that he has now become the wielder of his sword, as his former sorcery has been relinquished to wield the blade. It's pretty damn badass for him to activate the sword using his teeth, since he doesn't have arms anymore. Like, he literally left them in the seats in the theater. Granted, he doesn't have arms for now. I imagine somebody is going to use magic or some kind of technology to give him prosthetic arms. It only makes sense. As really cool as it would be for him to just go around wielding a sword with his mouth, it's not very practical. Hime-Yuri is also interesting to me since its ability summoned what appears to be 2 floating geishas. We've had dark goldfish, we've had thunder and lightning, murderous plants, crows, and now geishas. I'm curious to know what the last 2 swords do, because there's not necessarily a consistent theme with everything so far, at least nothing that I'm noticing offhand. Unless everything maybe has to do... This is just a guess, but if everything involves maybe part of some kind of folk tale or Rakugo story, if everything has like a part in that. Granted that Chihiro's sword is based off of their goldfish at home, but maybe the original line of swords had some kind of theme that tied them all together. But what does all of this mean for Uraha? With all of this talk of Mr. Samura, did he really go and attack and kill him, allowing for Hime-Yuri to be used like this? Overall, there's been a lot of great bait and switch up to this point. A lot of people, myself included, thought that Mr. Samura was going to die, given everything that's been leading up to it, the fact that he was the first one to get his sword back. I want to know, is he the one that killed Uraha? Has Uraha even been killed in the first place? Does a wielder actually have to die for the sword to be transferred? That's what we've been told so far, but maybe that's not the case this time. Either way, it's been super exciting. I'm very excited to see what all was happening behind the scenes leading up to this point, because there's a lot that we still don't know, and it's just been a fantastic arc, man. Kagurabachi has been doing so well. I'm very excited to see if it can go 3 for 3, going first place for my rankings 3 weeks in a row, but for now, it has been a fantastic chapter yet again, and I loved it. And that wraps up issue 50 of this week's episode of This Week in Shonen Jump. Or sorry, This Week in Jump. Oh my gosh, it's been a long hour. With Murakami now done, we see the return of We Never Learn's mangaka Taishi Tsutsui with Sidcraft no Saishu Suri, which, based on that name, we know that we're going to get some kind of English name in comparison. It's supposed to be a suspenseful rom-com with detectives. Go figure. I'm curious to see how this performs with the other romance series that we have going on in the magazine so far. I mean, just to theorize, if anything was to go in favor of this staying in, it would probably be hima-ten. But despite that, Sidcraft is obviously, it's getting the cover and lead color pages next week, and then the other color pages are going to Astro Royale, hima-ten, and Ichi the Witch. So Jump is really going in on promoting these 3 series in particular. I'm very excited for Ichi the Witch. Give me another color page. I'm very happy for that. But they're going in on hima-ten as well. So hima-ten and Sidcraft are going to be directly competing against each other. Time will tell to see who comes out on top of that, but overall I'm very excited for Tsusui coming back, because I did enjoy We Never Learn quite a bit. But for now, I want to hear from you. What are your thoughts on my ranking for this week? Do you agree with what I discussed, or do you have different opinions? I want to hear your thoughts in the comments down below, and don't forget to list your top 3 this week so I can chart them up for next week's episode. But for now, I'm Axel Blaze, and that's all for This Week in Jump. Bye-bye, everybody.